You see, one of the most fascinating things about life is how it has a rhythm that isn't always in sync with our own sense of urgency. And we imagine ourselves as the masters of time, rushing planning and arranging everything to fit neatly within our schedules. But have you noticed how life doesn't always bend to your watch? It moves to a greater pulse, a deeper order, and if you are attentive enough, you begin to see that this rhythm is not chaotic. It is purposeful, it is precise, and when it comes to meeting the person you are meant to share your life with, this rhythm becomes especially clear. How often do we grow impatient, thinking that love has forgotten us or that perhaps we've missed our chance? We scroll through memories, dwell on lost connections, and sometimes even question whether God has overlooked us. Yet the truth is that the delay is not neglect, it is alignment. The one you are searching for is not absent. They are simply being prepared, just as you are being prepared. If the two of you met too soon, you might have passed each other by, unable to recognize the treasure before your eyes. But when God weaves the fabric of timing, the meeting feels inevitable, as if everything before it were a series of stepping stones that led you here. Think about the strange way life redirects us. You lose a job, you take a different path home, you say yes to something you normally would have declined. And suddenly there is this encounter. You might call it coincidence, but deep down, you know it is more. For coincidence is merely the name we give the patterns too complex for us to trace. What you are experiencing is alignment, a grand design working quietly beneath the surface, drawing two lives into orbit until the gravity becomes irresistible. There's a beauty in this waiting if you allow yourself to see it. For waiting is not emptiness, it is preparation, just as the seed must rest in darkness before it can break into the light. So too must you be shaped by solitude, by trials, by discovery of your own soul. When the right person comes, back away from it. You are no longer meeting them with fragments of yourself, but with the fullness of who you've become through the journey. And this fullness is what allows you to recognize them not simply as someone attractive, not simply as someone convenient, but as someone divinely woven into your story. When timing is divine, you'll notice there is no need to force it. There is a flow to it, like water finding its course down a mountain stream. Obstacles may appear, yet somehow the current carries you closer. And in that movement, and you feel a strange calm. You don't need to manipulate, you don't need to cling, because you recognize that the same force that brought here will carry you forward. This is why when God points you to a person, it often happens in a way you couldn't have planned yourself. They appear in the gaps, in the moments you least expect. And that the presence feels like the missing note completes a melody. And the more you reflect on it, the more you realize that the timing was perfect, not according to your anxious heart, but according to a wisdom far greater than yours. So if you find yourself in a season where love feels late, don't despair, for life does not run on your clock. It runs on eternity's time. And when that alignment comes, it will not just be a meeting, it will be a revelation, a sense that all the wandering, all the waiting, all the wondering were never in vain. They were leading you to this moment, to this person, to this undeniable sign that what is meant for you will not pass you by. And when you finally meet them, You'll look back and understand every delay was right on time, right? Here's the 6,150 word expansion of key point 2 of flowing in that same reflective conversational styling. When God places someone before you, there is something deeper than attraction, something greater than surface level excitement. There is a peace that cannot be explained by logic or circumstance. It's not the absence of all questions, nor is it the absence of challenges. Rather, it's an inner stillness, a quiet reassurance that no matter what unfolds, you are exactly where you're meant to be. Most of us mistake love for a constant wave of emotion, a fire that burns endlessly. But real divine connection is not a storm, it's an anchoring. It's a sense of rest within the soul. And from it, you don't feel the need to constantly analyze every word, every gesture, or every silence, because underneath all of it lies a trust that doesn't need to be proven day after day. You may not even know how to put it into words, but you know it's real because of the calm it brings. This peace is unlike the thrill of infatuation, which often leaves you anxious, desperate, or insecure. Infatuation says, I need this person to validate me. Peace says, I am whole, and they only remind me of it. That's how you can tell the difference between what is fleeting and what is guided. When God points you to someone, you don't lose yourself in them. You find yourself more deeply within the presence of the connection. Notice how confusion drains you from it. You've probably been in situations where your heart feels restless, where you can't discern whether this person truly values you, whether they're meant to stay, or whether you're simply clinging to an illusion. That is not peace. That is struggle. And while every relationship has its disagreements, the undercurrent should never be turmoil. With the right person, there's a softness beneath it all, a sense of safety even when storms arise. It is like standing near the ocean. Waves will always come, some gentle, some strong, but if the foundation beneath your feet is steady, you do not fear being swept away. The peace of God works in much the same way. When he brings you someone aligned with your path, you sense the ground beneath you is secure. Yes, challenges may arrive, but you face them without the dread of collapse. You face them with confidence, knowing that the bond is not fragile. It is rooted in something eternal. And isn't it remarkable how this peace seems to contradict the noise of the world? The world tells you to overthink, to chase, to force, to demand certainty at every turn. But divine love whispers instead. It doesn't shout, it doesn't push. It simply remains. That's how you know it is real. You could be miles apart and still the connection does not waver. You could be going through hardships and still you feel strengthened rather than weakened. Peace becomes the language your souls speak to one another, and no chaos can erase it. And here's the secreting. Peace does not mean perfection. It doesn't mean you will never argue or that you will never have moments of doubt. But what it does mean is that deep down, the argument doesn't sever you and the doubt doesn't define you. You always return to that center, to that inner quietness that reassures you this person is not here to destroy you, but to grow with you. And that sense, that return is more profound than any grand romantic gesture. So when you are searching for signs, look past the fireworks and the fleeting sparks. Instead, listen for the silence. Feel the ease that comes when you don't have to prove yourself, when you don't have to fight for recognition, When you can simply be and know that it is enough, that is peace. And that is the sign that God is guiding you. And when you find it, you will realize that love is not meant to be a battlefield. It is meant to be a home. And in that home, your soul can finally rest. Here's the 650 word expansion of key point 3, continuing in that natural flowing style. When God leads you toward the right person, it becomes clear that it's not just about companionship or the comfort of having someone to hold. It's something much larger. The two of you are drawn together not only because who you are individually, but because of what you are meant to become together. And this is one of the most beautiful ways you can recognize the divine hand at work. The relationship is not simply about filling a space in your heart. It's about walking in the same direction toward something greater than either of you could achieve on your own. And have you noticed how with some people your energy scatters? You may love them, you may be drawn to them, but your paths diverge. One is chasing light while the other hides in shadow. One longs for growth while the other resists it. And as much as you try to hold on, you feel yourself being pulled off course. That is not alignment, that is dissonance. And the longer it goes on, the more it chips away at the purpose for which you were created. But when God points you to someone, there's a profound shift. Suddenly, your vision expands. Their dreams complement your own. Their values echo your own. And you begin to see how your individual callings intertwine. It doesn't mean you're identical. No, often you're quite different, but those differences are not obstacles. They are enhancements. Where you are weak, they are strong. Where they struggle, you are steady. Together, your paths form a bridge neither of you could have built alone. It feels almost like music, two melodies distinct on their own, but when played together, they create harmony. And harmony has a power that melody alone cannot achieve. It is fuller, richer, more complete. In much the same way, the right a person adds dimension to your purpose, amplifying what God has placed inside you. You begin to realize that the love between you is not self-contained. It spills outward, touching others, shaping lives beyond your own. This is why shared vision matters. Without it, love may feel passionate, but it will often feel directionless. You may care deeply for one another, but if your eyes are fixed on different horizons, you'll inevitably drift apart. Divine connection, however, sets both of your eyes on a horizon that matters. It may be raising a family in love. It may be serving a community. It may be creating something that endures. But whatever it is, the bond becomes more than just romantic. It becomes purposeful. And notice how liberating this is. You no longer measure love solely by what you can receive, but by what you can build together. The relationship ceases to be a closed circle of two and becomes instead a source of light radiating outward. The love you share becomes a witness, a reflection of something sacred, because it is not only about satisfying your hearts, it is about shaping the world around you. And this is what makes it different from fleeting attachments. With the right person, you don't feel drained, you feel propelled. They don't distract you from your path, they deepen it. And even in moments of struggle, there is a sense that the struggle itself has meaning because it is part of a shared journey. You are not pulling each other in opposite directions. You are moving together even if the terrain is rough. So When you are discerning whether someone is meant for you, ask yourself, do they bring me closer to my purpose or further from it? Do our visions collide or do they align? Do they reflect the values I hold sacred or do they dilute them? If the answer is that your paths seem to converge with a strange, undeniable clarity, then perhaps it is no accident. Perhaps it is the quiet work of God weaving destinies into one fabric. And when you recognize this, love ceases to be just a personal joy, it becomes a calling. And that is when you know you have found not just a partner for your life, but a partner for your soul. Here's the 65-word expansion of key point 4, written in the same flowing conversational style. Isn't it curious how life has a way of weaving patterns that we only recognize when we pause to look back? At the time, it may feel like chance encounters, missed opportunities, or random coincidences. But when you begin to see with a deeper eye, you realize that these so-called accidents are often signs, gentle nudges guiding you towards someone who is meant to matter. And the remarkable thing is, the signs rarely arrive with trumpets or flashing lights. They come quietly, repeating themselves in ways too consistent to ignore. Perhaps you've experienced this before. You think of someone and suddenly they appear in your path. You walk into a crowded room and there they are again, as if drawn by some invisible thread. Maybe you've tried to move on, to close that chapter, and yet life's reopened it with uncanny timing. These moments are not random. They are reminders. They are hints that there is something more at play than your own planning. We are quick to dismiss them, of course. We rationalize them away, telling ourselves it's coincidence or perhaps even our imagination. But what if it's not? Back away from it. What if the repeated crossing of paths is not life teasing you, but life teaching you that there is a connection woven into the design of things, and back away from, waiting for you to acknowledge it. When God is pointing you towards someone, he often does it through these little synchronicities. They are subtle enough to respect your free will, but persistent enough that you feel their pull. Like drops of water falling on stone, they carve an impression over time, reminding you that this relationship is not one to take lightly. You may try to run from it, but it keeps finding you. You may silence it, but the echo returns. And isn't it interesting how these signs often arrive just when you've convinced yourself to give up? It's as if the universe leans in, whispers, not yet. Pay attention. That whisper might come through a repeated number, a phrase that keeps appearing, or a door that opens with uncanny timing. Whatever form it takes, it leaves you with a feeling, something in your spirit that says, this is not ordinary. Now, it's important to understand signs are not meant to replace wisdom. They don't excuse us from discernment, but they do remind us that there is more happening than meets the eye. And when the same person keeps reappearing in your story, it's worth asking why. Because love that is divinely guided rarely arrives only once. It circles back, it waits at the edges, it calls you gently until you finally choose to listen. Think about how often in life we meet people for a season and then the season ends. There's no returning, no repeating, no deeper thread. But then there are those rare souls who keep resurfacing back away from it, no matter the distance, no matter the time. That is the kind of sign you cannot brush away. It is not merely that you are seeking them. It is that life itself seems determined to place them before you. And if you pay attention, you'll notice the effect it has on you. Their presence stirs something dormant, awakens something holy. You are reminded of who you are, of you're capable of where you're meant to go. These signs are not only about the other person, back away from it. They are about what the connection calls forth within you. So if you find yourself asking whether this is coincidence or calling, remember this keys. Life has no need to repeat meaningless things. If it keeps showing you the same face, the same connection again and again, then perhaps it's because there is a message in it, a message written not in words, but in patterns. And when you finally stop resisting, when you accept that the repetition is not accident but alignment, you discover something profound. What you thought was chance was actually guidance all along. And in that moment, you realize you were never chasing the sign. The sign was always chasing you. Here's the 6,005 word expansion of key point 5, written in that flowing, meditative Alan Watts style, delivering what one of the clearest ways to recognize when God has pointed you towards someone is through the transformation they bring into your life. Not transformation through pressure, not change demanded by control, but growth that feels natural, growth that feels inevitable. The Wrightson doesn't simply enter the story of who you already are. They awaken parts of you that had been waiting quietly beneath the surface and back away from it. Parts of you that only reveal themselves in the light of love. Think of it this way. Real connection is not a mirror that flatters you. It is a mirror that tells the truth. Sometimes you'll see your strengths reflected back, your kindness, your courage, your resilience. And other times you'll see the places where you are still rough around the edges, where impatience, pride, or fear still linger. But instead of using these reflections to shame you or belittle you, the right person uses them to encourage growth. They see who you are, yes, but more importantly, they see who you can become. Isn't it fascinating how love can refine us? Alone, we might ignore our flaws or justify them. Alone, we might settle into our comfort zones, never venturing beyond what feels safe. But in the presence of the right person, suddenly you are inspired to stretch, to rise, to let go of the parts of yourself that no longer serve you. You want to be better, not because they demand it, but because their presence calls it forth from you. It is as if God himself is using the relationship as a chisel, gently shaping your character into something pure, something truer. And growth is not always comfortable. In fact, it rarely is. There will be moments when the right person challenges you away from it, when they hold you accountable to your higher self. They may speak truths you don't want to hear or confront patterns you'd rather avoid. But instead of leaving you feeling diminished, those challenges lift you. They remind you that love is not about stagnation. It is about evolution. It is about becoming more of who you were always meant to be. It is easy to mistake this for conflict, but there is a difference. Conflict tears down while growth builds up. Conflict creates distance while growth deepens connection with the right person. Even the uncomfortable moments feel purposeful, as though the two of you are working not against each other, but against the limitations that once held you back. And isn't it remarkable how this kind of growth radiates outward? When you are with the person God has chosen for you, the transformation doesn't stay confined to the relationship. It spills into every corner of your life. You find yourself more patient with others, more disciplined in your work, more compassionate towards strangers. You begin to carry a light that you didn't carry before, because as the relationship is not only feeding your heart, it is feeding your soul. That is the hallmark of divine loving. It doesn't shrink you, it expands you. It doesn't make you lose yourself. It helps you find yourself in a deeper, more authentic way. And when you look back, you can see how far you've come. Not because you tried to become someone else to keep their love, but because their love reminded you of who you really are. So if you ever wonder whether God is pointing you toward a person, ask yourself, do they make me smaller, or do they help me grow? Do I feel drained and diminished in their presence, or do I feel awakened, challenged, and alive? Because the one God chooses will never destroy your spirit. They will refine it. They will draw you closer, not only to them, but closer to Him, shaping you into the kind of person who can love more fully, live more deeply, and walk more faithfully. And in that growth, you'll come to see that the right person isn't simply someone you love. They are someone who helps you become. And that is how you'll know they were sent. Here's the 6,050 word expansion of key point 6, written in that same flowing, reflective tongue. At the heart of it all, the greatest sign that God has pointed you toward someone is that the love you share begins to mirror His own. Not a love of possession or control, not a love that is transactional or fleeting, but a love that reflects something eternal. Kind, patient, forgiving, and enduring. And it is here more than anywhere else that you come to understand what it truly means for someone to be the one. Most of what we are taught about love is filtered through stories of passion and desire, through fire that burns brightly but quickly fades. We are told that love is intensity, that it is drama, that it is the grand gesture. Yet, when you experience the love that comes from divine alignment, you realize that its power lies not in how loud it is, but in how steady it is. It doesn't roar like thunder. It hums like a quiet flame that refuses to go out. This kind of love does not demand that you perform. It does not withhold affection until you meet impossible conditions. It simply offers itself freely and without fear. And because it is free, it invites you into freedom. You don't feel trapped or suffocated. You feel safe enough to be vulnerable, open enough to be seen as you truly are. In this space, love ceases to be about winning or losing. It becomes about being. Notice how this love forgives. The world teaches us to hold grudges, to protect ourselves with walls, to keep score of wrongs. But divine love disarms all of that. When the right person is placed in your life, you'll find forgiveness flows more easily, not because hurt never happens, but because the bond between you is greater than the wound. The love reminds you that mistakes are not the end. They are simply moments to grow through together. And there is patience in this love. Well, you don't feel rushed to prove yourself or forced to constantly reassure them. You don't feel like you are racing against time or competing against their doubts. Instead, there is an ease, a willingness to walk at the pace of grace, even when things take longer than expected, even when obstacles rise. There is a patience that says, we are not going anywhere. It's also a love that endures. It doesn't dissolve when life becomes inconvenient. It doesn't disappear when the first storm arrives. Instead, it reveals its strength in hardship. you realize that the person beside you is not here only for your laughter, but also for your tears, not only for your victories, but also for your failures. They are steady, not because they have to be, but because something in them knows this is where they belong. And perhaps the most extraordinary part of it is that this love points you back to God. It doesn't pull you away from your faith. It deepens it. It doesn't tempt you into selfishness. It reminds you of selflessness. It doesn't inflate your ego. It softens your heart. In the reflection of this person's love, you catch a glimpse of the divine. It is as though God uses them to show you his own nature, not in theory, but in practice, through patience, kindness, and grace lived out in everyday moments. That is why when you experience it, you know it is real, because it does not rely on constant reassurance or external proof. It stands firm even in silence, even in distance, even in trial. And you realize that the love you've been given is not just about romance, it is about revelation. It is God reminding you through this person that you are seen, that you are worthy, that you are loved with a love that cannot be broken. So if you are looking for the clearest sign, look not at the noise, not at the temporary rush of emotion, but at the quiet strength of love that reflects the heart of God. Because when you find it, you will no longer doubt. You will know. And in that knowing, you will finally rest in the truth that this is love as it was always meant to be.